Okay, so in this video, I'm going to cover the evil demon argument. And to see why Descartes thinks you need to cover the evil demon argument, you have to see what he thinks is lacking in the dreaming argument. So the idea behind the dreaming argument is you can't tell if you're dreaming or not. For any particular moment you pick in time that you're experiencing or that you have memory of, you can't tell whether that was a real experience or a dreamed experience. However, Descartes thinks the human mind is only really capable of rearranging certain fundamental ideas. So like when you're coming up with the dream, like the idea behind a dream is you're the source of it. You're in a sense the author of it. You're the author or the source of it at an unconscious level, right? You don't have conscious control, most of us don't, of your dream. And certainly if it's the kind of dream where you don't know you're dreaming, you don't have conscious control. But Descartes thinks what you're doing when you create that dream is you're taking fundamental elements that are real and you're rearranging them, right? Especially if the dream is lifelike and realistic. What you're doing is you're taking things which are real and you're putting them into a non-real situation, right? So if you have a fairly boring dream where you wake up and you go for a run and you trip over the sidewalk and you fall and scrape your knee and you limp back home, and that's the whole dream, right? Well, if that didn't happen, it's still the case that everything that you built the dream story out of must be real in some way. Now, that doesn't mean that like the neighborhood you ran through has to be real. It doesn't mean that like there has to be a sidewalk with, that kind of uneven pavement that you tripped over. But it does mean that like the basic ideas out of which that is constructed, the basic building blocks of the image of the story do have to be real, meaning there has to be like physical stuff, right? There have to be bodies that take up space, right? This is one of the fundamental things he talks about, because we couldn't just come up with that by ourselves if it weren't real. What we're doing in dreams is we're taking fundamental facts about reality and rearranging them to create a fictional story. And then we experience it as though it's not fictional. But what Descartes thinks that means is there are certain fundamental facts about the world and the way it works, which would still have to be true even if the dream is, even if you're dreaming, right? So while any particular experience you have would be false, there would be certain basic truths about the way the universe works, the fundamental laws of nature, which would still need to be true. And if you keep in mind who his target is here, that his target is Aristotle and more importantly, later Aristotelians, those are going to be the exact kinds of things, those fundamental laws of how the natural world works. Those are going to be the fundamental things that are going to be the foundations. Because remember, he's trying to attack the foundations of the Aristotelian worldview, and what in the Meditations he's pretending is his own worldview. He's trying to attack those foundations by undermining the evidence for them. But dreams don't present us with scenarios where our beliefs about the fundamental structure of the universe are false. In a dream, your beliefs about what is happening to you, what has happened to you, right? The sort of big picture stuff is they're all false. But the most fundamental facts about the fundamental laws of physics, facts about mathematics, Descartes uses the example of mathematics in this, maybe even facts, well, no, he's not going to say facts about biology. Descartes seems to think that the dreaming argument by itself raises the possibility that you don't have a body and that there are no, like there's no biological body that you have, right? But fundamental facts about physics, fundamental facts about mathematics are still going to be true even in the dreaming argument. And he wants to undermine even those fundamental principles of demonstration, because he wants to sort of start fresh. He wants to clear away all the Aristotelian stuff. And if you allow that the fundamental truths of physics and mathematics can be known, even if you're not sure whether you're dreaming, right? Because even in the dreams, these fundamental truths would be true, or these fundamental claims that you believe would be true. if you allow the physics and mathematics stuff, there is this worry that that's all you really need, that maybe the only fundamental principles of demonstration needed to do Aristotelian science are these fundamental facts. And so he wants an argument that undermines even those. And before I get to that argument, which is the evil demon argument, I want to draw your attention to something. The way this argument works is that Descartes is providing scenarios where we believe something's true, but it might not be true. So, for example, with dreaming, if I think I'm awake right now, I'm looking at, this can of Sprite that I just drank. Here's a belief I have. I'm holding a can of Sprite Zero. And I believe that's true, but it might be false. Because it might be false, I don't know that it's true. In order to undermine knowledge, Descartes is making a claim that the proposition in question is actually contingent. It might be false. Right? He's not saying it is false. I stressed this in an earlier video. His arguments for skepticism do not claim that, for example, we don't have a body. He says, for all I know, I might not have a body. And then, so that's the way the argument works. And then apply that to mathematics. Apply it to a mathematical claim like 1 + 1 = 2. Or triangles have 3 sides. If he's going to say that the reason you can't know these things, and he wants an argument that shows that we don't know these things, for reasons that'll become clear, especially when we get to Meditations 2 and 3, if he wants to say that we don't know them, then he's going to have to say we believe them, but they might be false. So he has to say it's possible that 1 + 1 = 2 is false. It's possible that 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. It's possible that triangles don't have 3 sides. And that's really peculiar, right? There are people who make skeptical arguments about mathematics who will claim that we don't know that mathematical claims are true. The most common version of this argument is actually the exact opposite of Descartes' argument, where the people say, well, we don't know that mathematics are true because there's no empirical way to establish that they're true. But put that aside. But nobody, almost nobody, I mean Descartes does, seems to take seriously the possibility that mathematical claims might be false. The point here is that some claims seem to be necessary truths. And if they're necessary truths, if they're true and they have to be true, if it's true and it's impossible that they're false, then it doesn't seem like Descartes' arguments, his skeptical arguments, have any chance of working against our claim that we know those truths. So it looks like if he's going to actually achieve what he wants to achieve here in Meditation 1, he has to deny that these claims are necessarily true. He has to deny that mathematics is a field that concerns itself with necessary truths. And that's weird. That's really odd. The eventual account he's going to give of what makes mathematical claims true is going to be even odder. But we'll have to wait till Meditation 3 to get to that. So he wants the fundamental truths of physics and mathematics to turn out to be such that we don't know them. Or rather, he wants to develop a skeptical argument that makes it look that way. Because after Meditation 1, he's going to start rebuilding our sort of conceptual repertoire. He's going to start building our knowledge back up from scratch and eventually show that he can overcome these arguments that he himself came up with. But for now, he wants to develop a skeptical argument that shows that we don't know, or seems to show that we don't know, that even the fundamental claims of mathematics and physics are true. And this is the famous evil demon argument. It's called the evil demon argument. Most typically, I mean, this is a bad translation in English, but it's gotten so common that I'm going to tell you about the bad translation. Like I'm going to call it the evil demon argument. The word here is daimon, which is like spirit or genius. It can mean all those things. Descartes did not have in mind like a little guy with horns and a pitchfork, and he's all red and he's surrounded by fire. He's not thinking that. The way he gets to this is he says, we all have an idea of God. He's not saying yet that God exists. In fact, it seems like for the evil demon argument to work, God couldn't exist, but we'll get to that later. But he says we all have the idea of God. We have that idea in our heads. And if we have the idea in our heads, then it's possible. If we have the idea, then it's possible. This is a principle he seems to endorse quite a bit, and a lot of people in the modern period endorsed, and I'll present it more formally. If X is conceivable, then X is possible. This is, at least on the surface anyway, a deeply rationalist commitment, because whether something's conceivable, whether you can conceive of something, it's just a fact about like what's going on in your head, right? You can figure out that something is conceivable without making any observations. Now, like if you actually observe that something's real, like if I wanted to know, is it conceivable that Sean Wilentz, the historian, has a book about Reagan? Yes. I know it's conceivable because it's real, right? I can see it. But you don't need to do that. In order to show that something's conceivable, you just have to conceive of it. It's an entirely mental operation. And according to this principle, if you can conceive of it, if you can coherently think about the idea, then it must be possible for that thing to exist. Doesn't mean it does exist, but it means it has to be possible for it to exist. And that seems like substantial knowledge about the world. It seems like you're really learning something significant if you find out that something could be true, right? That something could come to be. Descartes seems to be endorsing this principle here because what he does is the following. He says, we all have the idea of God. God's all powerful. What about the idea of God deceiving us about everything? And then he says, well, maybe God wouldn't do that, or maybe it would get me in trouble to suggest that God would do that. So instead of saying God's deceiving us, let's just say an evil demon could be tricking us. He wants you to admit that you can conceive of a supremely powerful being who is malicious and who wants to deceive you about everything. Is that likely? No. Is that real? Almost certainly not. But the most you can say is almost certainly, Descartes thinks, because you can conceive of it, so it is possible. I was going to go back on this later on, but for now, just think about the possibility that there is a supremely powerful being out there tricking you. And if you don't want to make it as religious themed as Descartes is, just think about movies like The Matrix. Right? Is it possible that you are the victim of an artificial intelligence that has hooked your brain up to a simulated world? Right? But that this artificial intelligence just wants to screw with you, just wants to trick you about everything. Wants to torture you by making you live a life where you're sad and deluded all the time. Right? Or is it possible a mad scientist has got your brain in a vat, right? You know, they got like a vat of liquid and it's got like wires connected to your brain, but it's just your brain. You don't have a body, right? And it's feeding you information and creating a simulated world for you. This world you're actually experiencing now is not real. It's a simulation. Now, in those scenarios, the AI and the mad scientist, they're not actually all powerful, but they're really all powerful when it comes to you. They can make your brain do whatever they want. They can feed you any information they want. Importantly, Descartes thinks, when you're thinking of the evil demon, you're thinking of a being that can make you believe that something is true and necessarily true. Something like 1 + 1, oh, I deleted it. I erased it. 1 + 1 = 2. He thinks the evil demon would be capable of making you not only believe that 1 + 1 = 2, but making you believe that it's absolutely certain that 1 + 1 = 2. So you can't even trust that feeling of certainty you have. And what he says is, if there is an evil demon, there's no way at all for you to know that the evil demon is tricking you. If there's an evil demon, the deception will be complete. And in such a deception, potentially everything could be false. In the dreams, it's you deceiving yourself. And Descartes thinks, well, there's some limitations on what you can do to deceive yourself. All you can do is recombine fundamental ideas. You can't like come up with new ideas. Like if there's no such thing as he will often put it in terms of extension, which just means if there's no such thing as bodies that take up space, your mind couldn't invent that. So even dreams don't lead you to question that there are bodies that take up space. But the evil demon can. The evil demon's more powerful than us. So if the evil demon exists, it could be tricking you. If the evil demon's tricking you, it could potentially be tricking you about everything. Any fact that you believe to be true could be something that the evil demon is making you think, but it's not really true. And there's no way you could know that this is happening. And you can't rule it out. It's possible, right? It's possible that there are beings more powerful than you that have you under their power. You can't rule that out. There are lots of movies and TV shows about basically this idea, right? And so the evil demon argument seems to show that you know nothing at all. And that is where he leaves you at the end of Meditation 1, which is where I leave you at the end of this video.